YouTube, welcome to my channel, I'm Bella, and today I'm going to be doing my last ever Bellamort video in the Bellamort series. I've got 4 of them, this is the last one, so here we are. What on earth am I going to be talking about? I'm going to actually be talking about Delphini, who is a character from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child play. We are going to be getting into that in some depth in this video, because a lot of stuff that isn't resolved in the book series, the 7 book series, is sort of resolved, summed up in the 8th story 19 years later. Okay, first things first, rewind, go back to the first book. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone if you're American for some reason, Voldemort gets to look in the Mirror of Desires, Mirror of Erised, the Mirror of Desire basically. He looks in and he sees the Philosopher's Stone, which is him being all-powerful and immortal. I suspect that this is purely fan conjecture, I suspect that he saw a second thing whilst looking there, weirdly enough Bellatrix around him with a load of kids that he didn't quite process, but that's just pure conjecture. But I suspect that he saw himself immortal, all-powerful with Bellatrix. Weirdly enough, yeah. Anyway, because why would you let an all-powerful bloodline die? I mean, Horcruxes can only take you so far. Anyway, moving on, that is speculation. We're going to deal with fact now. So this is Philosopher's Stone. He's seen what he desires. The Dark Lord has seen what he desires in the Philosopher's Stone book in the Mirror of Erised. So off he goes to achieve it. Okay. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, he offers the Lestranges a reward. They will be rewarded, and the reward is that Bellatrix will basically carry his kid. Okay, Order of the Phoenix. He busts Bellatrix out and her husband and a load of other Death Eaters, but Bellatrix is the only one that Lord Voldemort goes back to the Ministry of Magic in the Department of Mysteries to save. He leaves everybody else, but he saves her, and her alone. Note that. She also has Hufflepuff's cup, Horcrux given to her, which means loyalty and devotion. Okay. Half-Blood Prince is an interesting one for Bellatrix because she's not actually doing very much. In the book, she doesn't attack the Burrow, which is the house that belongs to the Weasley family. She's not there. She doesn't attack it. And she also doesn't attack Hogwarts at the end either. And she doesn't set Hagrid's hut on fire either. That's just in the film. In the books, she's only mentioned during the chapter where Narcissa, Bellatrix, Snape and Wormtail are all around, and she basically performs the unbreakable vow that says that Snape has to perform the deed and save Draco. And we all know what the deed is. I'm not going to explain that anymore. But she teaches Draco occlumancy, which is the art of shielding her mind, which means that she must be highly skilled to be able to do that. Considering that Voldemort is a highly skilled legitimens, that's the ability to read other people's minds instantly and to know if they're lying. Bellatrix must be very skilled at occlumancy, the fact that she's teaching Draco it. She saves Draco. That skill saves his life. And I think that's important. She also has that line, and it's a very telling line: if I had sons, I would give them up to the Dark Lord. Note that line. Basically, Tom Marvolo Riddle in this book keeps Bellatrix by his side as his personal bodyguard, but we all know that the real reason that she's by his side, like Nagini, is because she's pregnant in this one. She has to be, because why on earth would you have your best lieutenant and then not use her? He saves her in this one, rewards her, and then does not use her. He just sort of keeps her bolted to him as if he's afraid to lose her, which is really odd behaviour. And in fact, it does lead a lot of credence. Ah, yes, I know. Or give you an inkling. Ah, that's a, yeah, more literacy references. Anyway, moving on. Does give some credence to the fact that he must have some kind of feelings about her, because why save her? What's so special about Bellatrix, apart from the fact that she can deflect Dumbledore's spells whilst running backwards, running forwards and deflecting them backwards from her? It's interesting to note that he saves, that Tom Marvolo Riddle saves her in this, and Dumbledore calls him foolish. It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom. And that is a huge thing, because when you have feelings for somebody, I wouldn't say a love or a fondness for them, you do act like a bit of a fool. And Tom Riddle really did act like a tomfool in this one. But that's by the by. So in this one, Bellatrix is sort of put aside to teach Draco. And she does. Quite well, actually. And then she spends all her time hanging out with Voldemort and Nagini for a whole book. Not doing anything. Resting up after, you know, I've been in jail. I went on a mission. I failed the mission. He whisked me away and voila, and I get to be pregnant and not do a lot. Which is kind of bizarre considering that she's his best lieutenant. Anyway, yeah, from the master strategist that is supposedly Tom Marvolo Riddle, what does he do? He makes his best lieutenant pregnant and then keeps her by him for the 18 months before he loses the Battle of Hogwarts in the Second Wizarding War. Yeah. Oh, Thomas, it didn't make much. And in this one, she dies for him. That's the last book. So that is the recap of the 7 books. Now, Delphini. I know a lot of people go, oh, it's just fan fiction, blah, blah, blah. But it was all hinted at in the books. The relationship was there. It was hinted at. You could see it. Bearing in mind, I read this when Harry Potter was 11, I was 12. So I was a year older. And then by the time this one came out, Goblet of Fire, I was 14. And I was like, why does he keep babbling? Why does the Dark Lord keep babbling about the Lestranges when he's just popped out of a cauldron, as if he's disappointed that he can't see someone? It was most bizarre. Lestranges should stand here, but they were faithful. They will be rewarded. Blah, 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 blah. I like the Lestranges better than all of you guys. Yes, quite. And the whole Bella business, if you didn't pick up on the fact that Bellatrix is in an elevated state, yes, I know he does pull her down when he has that meeting, the Dark Lord ascending, he does firmly squash her and tell her that she's got to prune her family, hence poor old Tonks and Remus get it in the end of this. Spoilers, it's not spoilers, come on. But the fact that he squishes her down was to sort of show, no women before my bros, if that makes sense. Because Narcissa just keeps her stumped. She's not a Death Eater, but she's privy to all the meetings. It's really most bizarre. Anyway, moving on to this one. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. It's an interesting story, I have to say, and I rather enjoyed it, actually. Though I did find it, as an adult, I got a hell of a lot more out of it, and I wouldn't take a child that was under 12 to see it because it is quite graphic. Okay, so Act 1, Scene 4. If you answer the gossip, you feed the gossip. There's been rumours that Voldemort had a child for years. Scorpius not the first to be accused. The Ministry, for your sake, as well as ours, needs to steer well clear. Yeah. So there's been a rumour. And unfortunately for Draco, his wife Astora had a blood maledictus, which is interesting because Nagini has a blood maledictus. That is interesting indeed. And I think it's interesting that Bellatrix spent all of her confinement and pregnancy at Malfoy Manor. Okay. We then have some really interesting things happening. Because Scorpius has been putting up for years. Stops people staring, shouting, writing the son of Voldemort on my trunk. That never gets old. So he really is, this Scorpius is Draco's son, he really is thought to be the Dark Lord's child, which is interesting in itself. The fact that Draco had to run away in hiding because his wife was really poorly and they wanted to rest and quiet. I think that reminded people of what happened with Bellatrix Lestrange. The fact that for the 18 months that she was released from Azkaban, she spent all that time in Malfoy Manor, cooped up, pregnant, and probably having the life of Riley doing diddly squat. Yeah, I do like to eat paper. And then it's interesting again Thanks to Delphini's brilliant preparation work, we're going to take this potion and be transformed. So we know that Delphini at 21 is skilled with potions. Well, that isn't highly unexpected because Tom Riddle invented a potion that meant that you could regrow your body and stick your soul in it. You know, regrow your body. Or take a rudimentary body and then make it a full body. So that's hardly unsurprising. Yeah. And it's interesting the relationship that Draco and Ginny have in this. That's just me. It really is. And then this is interesting. I really liked it in Act 1, Scene 19. You could tell that they were building up to the Kid of Voldemort with this. Because all the books from the restricted section, and then some, Magic Most Evil, 15th Century Fiends, Sonnets of the Sorcerer, and that's not even allowed in Hogwarts, Shadows and Spirits, The Nightshade Guide to Necromancy, The True History of the Opal Fire, The Imperious Curse and How to Abuse It, and looky here, woohoo, My Eyes and How to See Past Them, by Sybil Trelawney, a book on divination. Hermione Granger hates divination. This is fascinating. This is a find. And then the books. I really like this. The books speak. The first is The Fourth, A Disappointing Mark. The Lestranges will be rewarded. Fourth book. And there's a dark mark in this one. So, links to Goblet of Fire there. You'll find it in Parked, but not in Park. The second is The Less Fair of Those That Walk on Two Legs, Grubby, Hairy, A Disease of the Egg. Now that, ovum, ovule. And the third is both a mountain to climb and a route to take. So sperms have got to swim to the egg. This is all pointing. It's a riddle. It's giving us a riddle. Yes, I know it is. The first is The Fourth. You'll find it part, not part. D-E, D-E. The second is Disease of the Egg, The Less Fair of Those. Dementors. We need to find a book on Dementors. Dominating Dementors, A True History of Azkaban. Who went to Azkaban? Bellatrix. And who basically, you know, was able to withstand the Dementors. Anyway, I was born in a cage, but smashed it with rage. The gaunt inside me riddled me free of that which would stop me to be. I was born in a cage, but it smashed with rage. The gaunt inside me riddled me free of that which would stop me to be. Now, it's interesting. Who do we know that was born in a cage? Well, you could say Tom Riddle. You could say Delphini. She smashed it with rage. The gaunt inside me riddled me free. It's interesting. I am the creature you have not seen. I am you. I am me, the echo unforeseen. Sometimes in front, sometimes behind. A constant companion, for we are intertwined. Yeah, all of that in Act 1, Scene 19 hints towards the relationship between Bellatrix and Lord Voldemort and Delphini in this book. Well, in the play. Anyway, into Act 2, we get some really interesting things. Part 1, Act 2, Scene 1. It's very interesting, the relationship that Petunia and Harry has, and I actually feel that in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Petunia actually not redeems herself, but we get a further explanation because we no longer see her through Harry's eyes of the 11-year-old. We see her as an adult who's put in an awful situation, who's actually grieving her sister. The reason she kept the baby blanket that's mentioned in this play is so that she would be reminded of her sister, and Dudley has to pass it on to Harry because after Petunia's death, and I find that very sad. It's almost like she couldn't give her sister to Harry because Petunia had lost her sister to the Wizarding World. She then lost her to James. She then lost her when she gave birth to Harry, and their relationship never was right. So when that blanket comes, which is all of Lily's love, Petunia grabs hold of it. And I think it's really important that within the wizarding world, there are people that are left behind, people that can't come. And it's interesting in the Fantastic Beasts series, we've got Jacob, the no-mage, the muggle, who's taken along, because there is, I think it's really important that muggles are left behind. They can't come. And that does affect people. Act 2, Scene 4, Delphini. I was rubbish, and then something clicked, and it will for you too. Not that I'm a super witch or anything, but I think you'd be quite some wizard. I think you're becoming quite some wizard, Albus Potter. So it's interesting that she didn't take to magic straight away. She was rubbish, and then it clicked. So that's interesting. Or she could have just been lying. If we whiz on a bit to Act 3, Scene 4. Poor old Craig Bowler Jr. Craig Bauer Jr. Yep, he's going to die. And it's interesting that we have this for Voldemort and Valor business in Act 3, Scene 3. All of those. That's interesting. And how Scorpius is revered as the Scorpion King. Very interesting. And I love the bit with Snape in this. I like the bit with Snape, and I like the bit with Dumbledore, because you get closure. There's a lot of closure in this. And also you get the scene with Hagrid coming to rescue Harry from the rubble, which you don't get in the books. I know some people will say it's revisionist, and I thoroughly understand where they're coming from with it. Now, where are we? Here we are. I love the dream in Godric's Hollow Graveyard where it's Aunt Petunia and young Harry. I smell guilt. There's a stench of guilt upon the air. I always got the feeling that J.K. Rowling was guilty for killing Tom Riddle, to be absolutely honest. And then you've got Aunt Petunia to young Harry. Get away from there. She pulls him back. Voldemort's hand rises in the air above the Potter's gravestone. And it's interesting, people don't consider the sacrifice that Petunia gave to save Harry. I always think that that's kind of interesting. Anyway, getting through. We will get through this. So then Cedric, they say, it's a lot of time-turnery, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, to quote a Doctor Who phrase in this. It is an augury. They're sinister-looking blackbirds that cry when rain's coming. Wizards used to believe that an augury's cry foretold death. When I was growing up, my guardian kept one in a cage. Your guardian? She used to say it was crying because it could see I was going to come to a sticky end. She didn't like me much. Emphina Rowell, she took me in for the gold. It's interesting because I believe that originally Narcissa wanted to keep Delphini and raise her in the Malfoy Manor as like a sister for Draco, but by that point I think that Lucius had a quiet but sensitive word saying we can't keep her because people will know, because she was at the Battle of Hogwarts. She wasn't resting in Malfoy Manor. So it would be unlikely that she would be able to keep it. And the fact that it's gold, I suspect that Lucius and Narcissa paid Euphemia Rowell to look after Delphini, because we know how rich the Malfoys are. And I think that that's because, and it goes back to this business, because of what Bellatrix did in Half-Blood Prince for Draco, teaching him, saving him, helping protect him, doing the unbreakable vow between Snape and Narcissa, sealing that. Narcissa felt that she had to step up and look after, or at least provide for Delphini. And it always gets me because she saves Harry with the light of Voldemort. know that he's dead. And then it's almost as if she does something so Malfoy, which is to protect her own. She gets rid of Delphini and leaves her to her fate. She pays so that she's well cared for and all. She's got shelter, she's got food, she's got good clothes, all of this. But she can't exist within the Wizarding world. It's almost like being excluded, but also included seclusion, because she couldn't go to Hogwarts. That was never on the cards, and I think that by that point, by the time that she was old enough to go to Hogwarts, Narcissa was either too frail or had died. And I think if Narcissa had put her foot down and said no, she needs to go, I think that probably the outcome would have been very different. So it's interesting. And it's interesting that she calls Cedric Diggory her cousin, because they're all cousins, all the purebloods are, and Delphine is the only one that kind of understands that in a way that I don't think the Weasleys appreciate or the Potters appreciate. But Draco does, and it's Draco and Harry's relationship that really, in this book, come together. And that is the first spell I've had to use on you. I thought I'd have to use plenty more, but you're far easier to control than Amos. Children, particularly male children, are so naturally pliant, aren't they? Now let's sort out this mess once and for all. And then she turns in part 2, Act 16, because before that, you kind of like her. Because she says, oh, I'm not a tragedy case. And then it's tattoo. It reminds me that the future is mine to make. So she can make her own future. And she does. I don't believe that you were ill. I actually think that she probably was quite ill as a child. I really do. I think that there was some sickliness to her, but she got over it. Strange. Anyway, it all heads south, as we know. And then it's, I will rebirth the dark. I will bring my father back. Unfortunately, Delphini wanting to meet Voldemort on the eve of the night that he killed the Potters would not have worked. If she'd actually physically met him and explained who she was, Voldemort would have killed her. Like that. So Harry does save her life, because I believe he would have just killed her. He wouldn't have considered it at all. Like the augury insists, the future is ours to make, so here I am, making a future with you for Voldemort and Valor. How bizarre. But it is also interesting that we get the parallel of what the Wizarding world would have been like had Voldemort succeeded. Also, we get the delightful Dolores Umbridge in this, who is an important character, because I think that in Azkaban, Dolores actually takes Delphine under her wing, because in this she's 21, and I think that whilst Dolores is alive, they form a friendship, which is unusual, because in Order of Phoenix, Dolores says that she doesn't particularly like children at all. They're too messy, too unclean, whereas I think that she'd quite like mentoring and supporting Delphine. Then we go to Act 4, Scene 3, St. Jerome's Graveyard. Love blinds us. And that is interesting, because I think Lord Voldemort and Bellatrix love was blind, was foolery, tomfoolery. It was foolish to come here tonight. And I think he was, because had he listened to Bellatrix in Half-Blood Prince, because she didn't trust Snape at all, she was the only one. She believed that Snape was a spy, and had Voldemort listened to Bellatrix, he probably would still be alive. Just pointing that out. So it is very interesting, I think. It's all shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah, and it's interesting that Theodore Nott comes back into it, because he's mentioned as a Death Eater, but he's too old to do anything. But in this, it's Theodore Nott had the only time turner. And then Draco says, no, my father, he liked owning things that no one else had. So basically, Lucius Malfoy is a bit of a kleptomaniac with magical objects, which is interesting because Lord Voldemort was known to be a magpie as a child and as an adult. And it's interesting when he talks about Astra. We were capable of having children, but Astra was frail, a blood malediction, a serious one. An ancestor was cursed. It showed up in her. You know how these things can resurface after a generation. I didn't want to risk her health. I said it didn't matter whether the Malfoy line died with me, whatever my father said. But Astra, she didn't want a baby for the Malfoy name, for pure blood or glory. But for us, our child, Scorpius was born. It's the best day of both our lives, although it weakened Astra considerably. We hid ourselves away, the three of us. I wanted to conserve her strength, and so the rumours started. So, then Harry says, love blinds. We both tried to give our sons not what they needed, but what we needed. Excuse me. I think that's interesting, because this is the first time we see Draco and Harry actually sitting down and having a heart-to-heart. Because they've never done that before, and you very much feel that they should have done. And then if you go on to Act 4, Scene 7. And it's interesting how we also get the Ron, Hermione and Ginny and Draco moment. There are lots of things in this. We can polyjuice into Voldemort and bring her to us. And this is interesting. And it's interesting that Ginny has this. Because her son Albus says, I liked her mum. You know that. I really liked her, Delphini, and she was Voldemort's daughter. That's what they're good at, Albus. Catching innocents in their web. And that's a reference back to, obviously, Chamber of Secrets, where Ginny wrote in the diary. But it's interesting what they got Harry as Lord Voldemort to say. Lord Voldemort is me. I'm following you. That's Delphini. I don't know. You leave me. I'm your daughter. If you were my daughter, I'd know of you. I'm from the future, the child of Bellatrix Lestrange and you. I was born in Malfoy Manor before the Battle of Hogwarts, the battle you're going to lose. I have come to save you. It was Rudolphus Lestrange, Bellatrix's loyal husband, who on return from Azkaban told me who I was and revealed the prophecy he thought I was destined to fulfill. I'm your daughter, sir. So finally, Rudolphus comes back, and whether out of spite or he's jealous to destroy Delphini in this way and set her up, because I can see him doing that, or whether he's still a fervent follower of Lord Voldemort, I'm going to say he's spiteful, that he's jealous, that he realised that actually he was never going to come out of Azkaban after Order of Phoenix, that Lord Voldemort put him away, locked him up, because he wanted his wife. Wife stealing does not go down well with the Death Eaters. I'm familiar with Bellatrix, and there are certain similarities in your face, though you haven't inherited the best of her. Now that, yes, it is Harry speaking in what he would think Lord Voldemort would say. So that just shows you that everybody kind of had an inkling, that it gives credence to the fact that everybody knew that Lord Voldemort and Bellatrix had this unique relationship, for want of better words. You haven't inherited the best of her. Ah. Yep. Oh yes, and she can fly, which is kind of cool. I always thought it was cool that they made Delphini fly. But it kind of is a bit silly, because later on she gets, like, Draco elevates her above the thing and they all watch the murder of the Potters. It is pretty grim, I have to say. And then she wants her memories to be forgotten. No, we'll take you back to our time and you'll go to Azkaban, same as your mother, where you'll rot. Draco. See, Draco... See, this is the thing. Narcissa, I suspect, protected Delphini for a very long time as a small child because they couldn't move. They had to wait. And how did Rudolphus Lestrange escape out of Azkaban? See, there's so many things not explained. No, we'll all watch. So they all watch it. It is, you know, horrendous. Well, hello. You must be Harry. Hello, Harry Potter. I'm Rubeus Hagrid, and I'm going to be your friend, whether you like it or not, because ye have had it tough, not that you know it yet, and you're going to need friends. Now you best come with me, don't you think? I like that scene that they included that. Yeah, so all in all, it is what it is. You know, I thought I'd lost him, Voldemort. I thought I'd lost him. And then my scar started hurting again. I had dreams of him. Could even speak Parseltongue again. Started to feel like I'd not changed at all. That he'd never let me go. Part of me that was Voldemort died long time ago. But it wasn't enough to be physically rid of him. I had to be mentally rid of him. And that is a lot to learn for a 40-year-old man. And that's true. Yeah, so Harry and Albus are always going to be together but not together. Delphini wasn't going anywhere, Albus. You brought her out into the light and you found a way for us to fight her. You may not see it now, but you saved us. And it's interesting that, and this is the graveyard, and here's Cedric's grave. The boy who was killed. Craig Bauer. How well do you know him? Not well enough. And that's very similar to Harry. So, because Harry didn't know Cedric well enough. So, all in all, it's an interesting ending. A lot of people don't like it, but I actually do, because as a first generation Potterhead, it kind of confirms everything that was going in the books that you could pick up on, and it is inferred. So, the thing is, I think as soon as Jane Dolores Umbridge dies, Delphini will break out of Azkaban. There is no doubt about that. So there possibly could be more. But who knows? She's kind of done this to sort of stop the story from developing. But we will find out more with Fantastic Beasts. But that's so prequely. But I hope you've enjoyed this Bellamort series, 4-part series. I know that this has been a long one to get through it all. Yes, there are things that people may quibble and think that Lord Voldemort should be asexual. And I was like, yeah, but that's how he's presented in the first 3 books. He's presented as like this dark fiend. But then from book 4 onwards, he becomes far more human and far more interesting and far more complicated. But just as Harry ages with the books, so does the reader, and you pick up different things. I was 14 when I read the 4th book. If I was, say, 12, I perhaps wouldn't have picked up on why is the Dark Lord so keen on the Lestranges? What is he going to reward them with? That never kind of got solved, but it's here. It's all here, and it's all in the books. So please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on Bellamort or Voldatrix, as it's often called. It sounds like a cereal, doesn't it? Anyway, stay safe, stay local, and follow government advice. Bye, and thank you very much for the support. Bye-bye.